Hello, we are the Justified Agents of Ashai. I am Janik and Eira.
And I am Eira.
Today we're just going to talk about our reactions and how we saw the first season of House of the Dragon. So our initial reactions to it and how it fits into the whole George R. R. Martin universe. We're coming at this from two different angles. Did you read the books? Or the book?
The House of the Dragon is based on George R. R. Martin's book Fire and Blood. I started to read it. I never even got as far as the Civil War part because I love his series books, or A Song of Ice and Fire series books, but Fire and Blood read too much like an encyclopedia, so it was kind of rough following for me. So I never finished it. Now that we're doing this, I'll probably go back and try to finish reading it.
So you've been exposed to the books and you've seen this series. You've seen the first season at least a couple times. You kind of really have seen a lot of different pieces of it and picked up a lot of different parts to it. Whereas I'm approaching this brand new. Haven't even seen the end of the Game of Thrones.
So this is his fresh reaction.
So yes, I have a different perspective on this, and we obviously have different styles. I think we definitely have different takes on it because for me, I felt like Game of Thrones did an amazing job of bringing together a couple of different genres, maybe 3 or 4 different genres, and weaving together stories of the small folk and as well as the comings and goings of the kings and in the chessboard moves of the kings and queens and so forth. Those concepts are kind of split up in the following series, with the Knight of Seven Kingdoms really focusing on the small folk and some common things of like nobility and things like that. And adventure, the House of the Dragon focuses more on the kings and the queens and the chess moves, the doings of the royal folk. So the highborns and so forth, and the intrigues, the marriages and all that. And to me, I like the common folk people. I like their stories, and their lives are interesting and richer and fuller to me. I found it a little bit dry getting started because it seemed to focus on really kind of developing these rich and mighty characters that I just don't, care about at first.
Not bonded to.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just like, so like, who cares? Who cares who's king? Who cares who's queen? Who cares if it's a woman or a man? I don't think the small folk really care. They kind of imply that they do. Oh, we can't break the tradition. I don't think they care. I think it's every other series is like, if we have something to eat, then that's fine. If we don't, then we care.
No matter who it is, we're mad.
Yes, exactly. So I found that to be the case. But you liked it.
Yeah. I see it as just a prequel to Game of Thrones. I think the format is still exactly the same. So it's just kind of getting a different time period because you're like, I think 175 years prior to the events of Game of Thrones. But I think the format is very much the same. And this is where me and him, I guess, disagree a little bit. Because I don't think Game of Thrones was about the small people at all. I think it was about 5 kings fighting for the crown, and you looked at the people in their court. It wasn't much the farmers or anything like that. Yeah, you had a smith, but he also was a king's son. And he became a great lord. And so it's not like a nobody. And you also had the Onion Knight. But those are the 2 commoners. But the Onion Knight, he became Hand of the King. So most of the time I felt like Game of Thrones focused on fighting for the Iron Throne, who should rule it, and looking at the court of those people and how they're making their decisions. House of the Dragon used that same formula. I would say it's not as busy, because Game of Thrones, you were looking at the Lannisters, the Starks, the Tullys, Daenerys, who else? Frey's. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so I feel like you had a lot more stuff going on, whereas this is highly focused. And so that might be a little boring for some people because you kind of have to be just really interested to see more about the Targaryen family, because it is based on the book Fire and Blood about the Targaryen family. So it's just a lot more focused. You're only at King's Landing or Dragonstone like the whole entire first season, except for maybe one scene of Daemon in Essos with his wife when she passes away. That's it. But you don't get to see any politics there, what's going on. It's highly focused. But if you want to know more about the Targaryens, and if you want to see more dragons in action and how life was like when dragons were common and the Targaryens were at the top of their power, then I think you will really enjoy the series.
I feel like a word you mentioned is very important, and that's politics, because I feel like this is a lot of politics in this series. And whereas in the Game of Thrones, per se, you see a difference between politics and matters of state, which are political, obviously. but there's definitely a difference. And part of it too was a bit of the pacing. It starts to change towards the end, and it starts to rev up and so forth. But and I felt like when they do these time jumps, and I feel like that could have been handled better in a way that like maybe with maybe kind of start off the action a little bit, get to the action a little bit quicker, and go into flashbacks to explain how they got there or whatever, and why that was important. Yes, and it could have paced things better and not gotten into so much of the dry politics. It's like just because you want to tell that part of the story or explain that part doesn't mean you have to do it in a dry way. You could find other ways to insert that into there.
Although I really enjoyed the series, it's better than 98% of the stuff out there. We both agree that it's still very good. So we're not poo-pooing it at all. Like he is comparing it to Game of Thrones. He's saying Game of Thrones is the best series, one of my favorites. And this is maybe, top 6, or something like that. But we both agree that it's a slow start. Matter of fact, I hope I didn't like plant any seeds in him because so when I compared season 1 to season 2, season 1's a lot of just building and setting things up. It's not, not as intriguing. Like in Game of Thrones, it's like it starts off with a murder plot, somebody killed the hand who did it, and then you have like Brandon being viciously attacked. And there's a lot of action right from the start. Infidelity found, possibly murder of the king, usurping of it's action. Where this is, things are happening, but not at that level of intrigue. There's no murdering. There's no, scheming like that. Nothing too dramatic. It's more like my mom died. Oh, my mom died too, and bonding over the death of their mothers. And then the next episode might be, I miss my wife. Well, I miss my mother. Let's bond over that. So it comes across as very slow and less dramatic. And I really feel like it was a slow start. And we both kind of thought that maybe they could have just kind of picked up at Leonora's funeral, something like that. You could have got a lot of palace intrigue just from that alone and done flashbacks to cover other things.
Also, I think that you see in the Game of Thrones that while there is magic and there are dragons and things like that, zombies and so forth, they are, especially in the early seasons, very much on the edges. They are very much touched on. It's like in Jaws, you don't see the full shark until halfway through the movie. Whereas this one is like, no, we're just starting from the beginning. Like this is all just this is going to be about dragons, which I get that it's the significance of the death of the dragons, or the end of dragons, I should say, and the end of the Targaryens rule, which is all based on dragons. So I get that that's significant. And I guess it's the second series, and so they're picking up from where the first one left off. And in that sense is, well, you already have dragons, so let's just throw it.
You already know about magic. You already know about prophecy. So there's nothing to build towards. So in a way, House of Dragon kind of got the short end of the stick that way, where it was never going to be as powerful of an impact as Game of Thrones, because we've seen all of this before. Like I said, it kind of, to me, mirrors Game of Thrones exactly in the fact that it's people squabbling over the throne. It's the same formula, just a smaller group of people, only Targaryen versus Targaryen instead of the King of the North versus Renly Baratheon versus Stannis, versus the Iron Isles, Daenerys. You don't have all of that. You just have two people fighting for the throne, but it's still the same formula. So this is kind of like, if you're into the history, you want to see what the Targaryens looked like at the height of their power, then this is a great story for you. And of course, you start to see them decline. So where it all started to go wrong, basically, so I think people like the backstory of their favorite show, Game of Thrones.
And one thing that is nice, I do like some of the character development when you have like Daemon, who is just, it's hard to get a handle of what exactly is he power hungry, or is he just, how much does he want to be king? How much does he want to like do what's best? How much is he supporting his brother who is the king?
How much does he want to just be loved by his family? Because the middle syndrome of royalty can be pretty rough.
Yeah. How much is he like a Prince Harry type character of, kind of like internalizing being spurned by his family or not as important to his family. And so he goes off and does his own thing.
Yeah, my take on it was that, he ultimately is a very loyal character who just gets overzealous in his support for his family. That's how I see it. I don't think he poo-pooed and cried too much when he lost the heir.
And that's what makes his character is interesting. Because I don't think it's clear. You can clearly say really anything with too much, because he just doesn't seem he's 100% one way or 100% the other. there's enough to make you question, well, he probably feels a little bit of this and a little bit of that. He has such a devilish, evil smirk that if he is a bad guy, you kind of almost want to root for him.
Yeah.
And if he's a good guy, you're kind of hoping that he's not a good guy. So I find that it's a great character. Oh, shoot, what's his name?
Amond.
Of Amon. You're kind of setting up him like to be. He has a good way of seeing things and seeing a few moves ahead and making moves and yet still being antagonistic and all that and kind of reckless in his own way, kind of following his uncle's footsteps.
Yeah, I definitely feel like he's been inspired by his uncle, because the scene in season 1 where they're all in court and Aemon is present and administers the king justice by, chopping off the head of Vaemond Valerian for for straight out calling his wife a whore and her children illegitimate. He cuts his head right in half in front of everybody in the court. They pan to Daemon's face and he's like, that's how I should be. Like, I want to be exactly like that. I mean, I feel like that's what that looks at. Like, damn, I wish that was me.
Another very important scene, I think, is where you have Otto treating with Daemon. Daemon had stolen the dragon egg and saying he's going to get married, and he's like, oh, this is going to be a big deal, and so forth. And it really seems like it's going to come to blows. Otto and Daemon in their own way seem to be like, they're okay with that.
Yeah.
They're okay with it going there. But you see Rhaenyra literally fly in, swoop in, and resolve everything.
In like 10 sentences.
Yeah. Against her father's wishes, but proving that her father was right to name her as the heir, because she is the level-headed one who can see the right path to peace and limit the bloodshed and to do what's best, for everybody. So I thought that scene was really kind of setting up how, things are, even though in a sense she was opposing him, and they would obviously, by the season's end, get married.
I think she always had a thing for him from the start. It just seemed like that to me,
But in this way, they were kind of at the opposite ends, right? He stole the dragon egg, and she had to get it back.
Yeah.
So, but she was able to do it, and to use a little bit of that, his feelings for her, kind of use that against him in a way that she knew that he wouldn't strike her, or, I think she knew that she had a lot of leeway with him. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and you can see more content. We'll be reviewing all the episodes in season 2 in preparation for season 3 in its debut.
And we're going to continue to make shorts on any of these series that we've been watching as well, for more deeper insights than just the general stuff that we talked about here.
So until then, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.